Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but like reality feels more unreal than it has in the past. Like, I mean, and I don't mean that in like a goofy kind of way. I mean, like just it just seems like there's a lot of stuff that's gone on. I mean, look at just kind of recent events. Now, I realize that the internet once again has had a I realize that the internet once again has had an effect with this because we get information like just instantaneous about it, just like automatically, right? If a plane goes down, like the whole world seems to know about it in like 3 seconds, right? It's already being reported on live, and everybody, instead of helping people that are like apparently burning to death on the side of the street, we're recording it. So for whatever reason, I'll never understand people's logic with that. That's just weird to me that people do that. But so I mean, it has this sort of unreal feeling. Is kind of the way that I was kind of approaching this. I was just thinking about it like a couple days ago, and I was thinking of like, well, what would be an interesting kind of topic? Even though I don't like to do topics according to Hoyle, but I was like, okay, well, I wonder what would be an interesting kind of topic. Like, okay, well, all right, so reality feels a little slippery right now for I think a lot of people. And a lot of folks aren't very happy with things. And of course, we're hearing about it because, once again, the internet, right? Back in the old days, for the Gen Xers out there, you only saw happy stuff on TV, right? Now you kind of see, the emotions run the gamut, right? I mean, it's like it's everything all the time, 24/7, nonstop. It's constant on the internet. So I got to thinking, like. I mean, I hate to not to abuse the lines and stuff, but like, is this kind of real life, and what does it mean, right? Like, is this a game? Is this a learning experience? Is this sort of an intermediary existence? Whatever this is, the shared existence that we all have here. And I've touched on this a couple of times in some older videos, and I don't usually go into stuff like this because it is kind of existentialist. But I've been talking about a lot of the math stuff and the economic stuff for some time now, and I'm not going to give it a break necessarily, but I am going to just try and pepper in some other like completely elective crap that maybe people want to talk about that have nothing really to do with everything going on right now, because a lot of stuff going on is kind of depressing. In its own way. I don't see it quite that way. I mean, I see it as just challenges that just have to exist, right? Because if you had a perfect life, if everybody had perfect everything all the time, you'd be miserable there too, right? So that's what kind of brings me into that question of like, okay, well, all right, how are we gonna, how do we want to approach this? How do we want to look at this? And I realize there's the religious implications as well. Right, so I mean, like, because there's all the different religions, the world's different religions, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying, like, I'm stating it as a fact, right? There's all these different world religions that are out there. So, so what do we think? Is this a simulation, a hybrid simulation? I can't explain the moon and the sun. I don't mean like that they exist. I mean, obviously, we can see them empirically, right? We can all agree that the moon and sun exist, but the size, right? I mean, and like, this has been, I'm not the only one who brings this up. Like, lots of people have brought this up in the past, that the moon is supposed to be, 138,000 miles away, I think it's 138,000, and the sun is supposed to be 93 million miles away, yet they, from our vantage point, look like the exact same size. And that is let me slow this thing down because it's just scrolling like crazy right now. That is a strange phenomenon, don't you think? I mean, even if we were to look at the odds of the so-called Big Bang and everything else, like even if we were to look at all of that, it kind of, to me, strains credibility. And again, remember, I say this stuff as an atheist. Okay, so I'm looking at this just from purely scientific perspective, which says, okay, well, it exists. Yes, we can observe the moon, we can observe the sun, all that kind of stuff, and we can observe, our existence and whatever it is that we share among among ourselves on this planet, so we can observe those kinds of things. And there's two laws that govern human existence: physics and conscience. That's it. Those are the two things that govern everything. Everything else is somebody's opinion. So, because of all that, it just seems like it stretches even the idea of the, I think it's like the theory of really big numbers. It kind of stretches the imagination to think that we would have a moon that's like precisely placed, because if it's not there, then the ability to even have life function on Earth doesn't exist. Even Christopher Nolan, kind of in his movie Interstellar, shows the water planet, right, where it's like, yeah, it's got water, it's got hydrogen and oxygen, but it's not like the ability to sustain life doesn't exist, so life can't really exist there. Okay, and so Earth is kind of the same way, right? Earth exists inside this sort of little Goldilocks zone, if you want to call it that without these things, then life on Earth just simply can't exist, right? And the moon is one of them. So there's a book, full disclosure, I haven't read it. It's called Who Built the Moon? I own the book. I haven't. It's on my list of stack of crap that I got to read. I'm getting to it slowly, but it's an interesting case, for like I guess you could think of it like maybe a temporal causality loop. It's an interesting idea. Now, again, obviously, I mean, if you guys, want to talk about the economics of it all and such, I mean, like, it is related. All of this stuff is, in fact, related. All of it's connected, at least in my mind. All of this stuff is, in fact, connected somehow. Now, as to what that connection is, it may be a little bit up for grabs. So, then who are the simulators? That's a really good question. One of my theories is that, is that people are actually a food source. Now, I don't mean like V, okay, not that like TV show V back in the 80s, for those of you old enough to remember that. But I mean like a type of food source, right? And in order to be humanitarian about it, you can't eat them when they're really little. I'm gonna skirt my account getting banned by saying this stuff, I think, but like you can't. So what you do is you put them in the simulator, and then they live a full life, right, in their mind, so that way. I mean, it's actually a fairly decent premise for a science fiction movie or something like that. That isn't really like the Matrix, which is this weird idea of fusion that is never really explained. But it's, again, as with all science fiction, it's people kind of lose the plot. They get stuck in the science fiction as opposed to understanding that's a plot device to tell a broader story. But yeah, that's a good question. Who's running the simulators? Maybe it's us. Maybe it's the people that exist here right now are the ones that are actually running it, Ready Player One style. So, and I guess that would apply to the movie more so than the book. Although, I mean, the book touches on that as well. So let me, because this thing like zapped past like 500 people or whatever it is here. I need to scroll back and try and find you guys here, because somebody had said something here. Let's see here. Just got a number 2 gifter badge. Well, thank you to whomever that was. Again, one of these days I'll need to sit down and actually look this stuff up. Dark Side of the Moon, yep. And let's see here. Moon is a satellite. It has a manipulated female fertility. You know what? Again, it's like, I think that's just as valid a theory as probably anything else out there. Sort of like the religions. I said this a long time ago, but like, whenever I hear someone talk about any religious thing where there's a guy in the clouds, this old man in the clouds with a long white beard who looks like Billy Gibbons, who spoke everything into existence in like 7 days. I think that is just as odd to me. I think it has just as much validity as the 80 billion years ago nothing exploded and created everything we know. I think that's just as valid a theory. Now, are any of these right? Maybe not. But I mean, like, I think they're just as valid. So yeah, I mean, I think that, I think a lot of this stuff is up for grabs. Let's see here. Food for worms. Yeah, no kidding, huh? It's entirely possible. I mean, hey, I mean, think about it. Dune. Frank Herbert. They're giant worms, but they're worms nonetheless, right? People are spiritual forces. It's possible. That's another possibility entirely. Let's see here. They said a lot of movies made were actually documentaries, such as They Live and Close. Yeah, I mean, and it's. I guess you could say that would be possible. I still tend to look at those movies as more metaphorical. Particularly They Live. They Live is like the equivalent of a 2x4 to the head in terms of its symbolism. I don't know how anybody could miss the symbolism of that. John Carpenter has this really kind of strange directing style, right? If you want to call it that. I don't want to say strange. Just he's highly stylized. In other words, you kind of know you're watching a John Carpenter movie, and it's sort of like watching a Wes Anderson film. Like you kind of know who the director is just based on their kind of stylized way that they shoot things. And in the movie They Live, it's like it's almost over the top in the way that the metaphor is almost so over the top. It's so satirical that it's like hard to get yeah, dude. It really is sort of this metaphor, if you want to think of it, for not going along with just whatever the TV is telling you, and again, live your own life. Close Encounters would be a fascinating one to see if that was actually that'd be an interesting one. That's one of my favorite movies, actually, from way back in the day. When I was a little kid, is when I saw that, and not in the theaters, but I saw it on TV a long time ago, and it was akin to Spielberg talking about he saw, I think it's The Greatest Show on Earth in a movie theater, and it scared the hell out of him. He'd never been more scared of the train wreck scene. Yeah, Close Encounters was like that for me when I was a kid. We run our own simulations and live out our lives. Confirmation bias, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It certainly feels that way. It certainly has kind of an odd feel right now. Everything has sort of this strange feel to it from what I'm seeing. And what I mean by strange feel is just, it has this, I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. Everything that we're kind of seeing now, it almost feels scripted. And let me explain what I mean by this. Let me expound on that. It feels like we've done this a lot, right? And now I know that everything old gets made new again, right? I mean, bell bottoms came back in fashion and so on. I mean, all these different things and stuff. I'm waiting for the days that bringing back Bugle Boy jeans and British Knights tennis shoes. I mean, why not? I mean, we're already recycling everything, from the 80s. Why don't we just recycle that while we're about it too? But everything feels just really scripted almost, and that's the part that's interesting. It's like watching just the internet. I mean, we all know that the internet is, for the most part at this point, because ICANN isn't really owned by the United States anymore. It's owned by the world, whatever the hell that means. Obama did that back in the day. It was a terrible idea. It's caused a lot of problems as a result of it. But yeah, I mean, this is the part where it just seems like it's like when you go to search engines and you already kind of know what you're going to see. It's just going to be some scripted nonsense if you try to search anything. I don't know if I'm making any sense with that, but I mean, that's what it kind of feels like. It's like anytime you look something up, you have no idea if it's real or not. You have no idea, is this real or is this a lie? Is this just some information that they wanted me to have? It's like the history thing, right? Knowing history is powerful, but it's not really powerful. What's really powerful is knowing accurate history. Now that's really powerful. If you know the accurate history. Notice that, I mean, a lot of archival type stuff is not really made available to people anymore. You can't see a lot of the archival stuff anymore. Who knows how much manipulation is being done on the back end. We talked about this, I think, last week. Who knows how much manipulation is being done on the back end? Let's see here. The Abyss. was a documentary. That's possible, man. Um, let's see, open all possible. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's kind of where I'm at this point now. I don't know that I would be really all that surprised in either case. You know what I mean? Like whether it's the guy in the clouds, long white beard, looks like Billy Gibbons, or Oblivion. I don't know that I would really be surprised in either case at this point. Let's see here. Comments on the upcoming trade war. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens with it. We'll see how this thing plays out. There's a couple of ways it could probably go, I suppose. I mean, we have to factor this in. Most countries are declining, right? You know, the country where, you know, like China's in decline. I'm like all these countries are in decline. South Korea, Japan, the U.S., Canada, Mexico. Well, actually, yeah, I think even Mexico is slightly in decline. They're not even at 2.1% or 2.1 births per female. So all of these countries, something like 95 countries, are in decline, just mathematical decline. Now you could say that, like, well, it's demographic decline. Yeah, it is, but I mean, I prefer to just think of it as math. It's just like, well, yeah, you don't have enough people to support all this stuff. So these countries are going to try trade wars. They're going to try gimmicks. They're going to try everything in the world they can to come up with trying to save their cheese. Right? There's a book by Spencer Johnson called "Who Moved My Cheese." And if you haven't read it, it's a good book. It's a thin little book. You can read it in about 2-3 hours. Some of you read faster than others. And if I read kind of slow, just because I'm like, I create voices for the people to anyway. But yeah, I mean, like, this is kind of how this works. And so all these countries are going to try and hold on to what they got while it's in decline. And yeah, so I mean, it's sort of just, I mean, I guess I would think about it like, everybody's a good friend until money's involved, and then nobody's friends anymore. It seems it's odd that happens like that. But as far as, like, do I think that it's gonna work? Time will tell. I saw the 25%. What is it? 25% north and south, and then 10% to the east. It's like, well, we'll see what happens with it. We'll see if it does spur growth here. We'll see if we do start making stuff again. That's going to be the question that I have. Is, are people going to start? Are Americans going to start taking up the slack and start saying, yeah, okay, hey, I'm going to go do these outdoor jobs, so to speak. We're going to start building stuff. That's the question. And of course, that part I don't think is going to work the way that everybody thinks it is, and that's largely because of the family court system, which, for better or for worse, has completely destroyed the incentive for men to even attempt to have a normal life. This is just a reality. You can be mad at me all you want. You can think I'm misogynistic or whatever. I care what you guys think anyway. But I mean, like, men have been so demoralized by the family court system and remember, men don't work for money in the abstract. They work for the result that money buys. And if the money isn't going to really buy them the life that they kind of want, which is just like, I mean, we all know, most of the people watching this right now are young men. It's a true story, right? I mean, I can look at the stats after this video is over, and it's going to be something like 98% men, between the ages of like 18 and 35 or something like that. And so, yeah, and that's not to diss my female viewers. I mean, I have several, but I mean, I'm just pointing out, like, I mean, it's this part will be kind of a men issue, because men work for what the results they want, and if they're not going to be able to get the results, then they're just not going to pick up the slack the way everybody thinks. Especially if it's like, okay, we're going to work, and we're going to go out and roof houses, and we're going to pour concrete, and we're going to do all these jobs, because we've deported everybody, all the labor. They're going to do that because they think that they're going to be able to not be destroyed financially, and that remains to be seen. And I don't think that there's anybody who's going to do anything about that. That's too politically unpopular. That's way too political. That would be like, imagine someone coming out there saying the 19th Amendment was a horrible mistake and it's destroyed the country. I mean, like it hasn't destroyed it as much as, rent seeking. Rent seeking has done more damage than than feminism has done in the U.S. I would argue, but yeah, that's just wildly unpopular. So no one's going to say that. I mean, you look at the amount of people that stop following me as soon as I even mention that kind of stuff, man. It immediately, like 15 people gone instantly as soon as I say that. Yeah, of course, it's hugely unpopular. If God is forever, why would he have old? Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like that's the I'm using that as sort of a device, because that was the whole idea behind that. Give me 1 second. The imagery of God the Father kind of thing, with the white beard and the flowing robes, all that kind of stuff. So I have sawdust in my shoes. I've been running a chainsaw all day long, so you have to forgive me. How would a Fight Club remake be? Oh my God, I hope they don't touch that. It'd be like imagine trying to remake like It's a Wonderful Life. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Like, why would you touch a classic? Fight Club is one of these movies that comes along, once in a lifetime, that is truly lightning in a bottle, and no, you don't want to touch it. You just do it, leave it alone. It doesn't need to be remade. I would think it would be an epic disaster. Unless you could convince David Fincher himself to like do Fight Club 2. I don't know how you would do that. The actors, they're going to break a hip during the fight or something. I don't know. I don't know how you would. I don't think you could come up with a decent premise for that unless it was something. That stretches the imagination there. But I don't think it would go well. It'd be interesting to see him try, but I don't think it'd go well. What about past civilizations, technology? See, this is another good question too. This is something these are the kinds of things that I think about when I'm driving, actually. If I'm driving on a long drive, that's 11, 12 hours kind of thing, which I do quite a bit. But this is the kind of stuff I think about. What if a past civilization, for example, that existed had an energy source? This is the kind of stuff that I think about. They had an energy source, and the energy source in the past was like, it created sort of like a background radiation kind of thing that we don't have a way of really measuring, because we don't notice it. We don't know to measure it. So it's ignorance, right? You don't know what you don't know. So if modern day humans, what we would think of as modern day humans, aren't able to measure this type of background radiation, that could be causing us to age prematurely. We would have no way of knowing it. David Mitchell, in his book Cloud Atlas, sort of like approaches this with the kids, these young people on this island, right? That live there in peace and everything. And they all age, and they pretty much like age out at, like, by the age of 40, they're pretty much like done, right? Now, to everybody else hearing this would go like, oh my God, if the average lifespan was only 40 years, people go, right? That's how we think, right? Well, imagine that like there's some civilization in the past that had advanced technology that was creating electricity or some kind of energy, and it worked great for them. But their government back then never covered it all up and said, oh no, it's perfectly fine. Don't worry about this 5G or whatever, don't worry about any of this so-called this digital background radiation that we don't know anything about. And then it took their lifespans from being maybe, 1,000 years down to being like 80-ish, right? And then cut to about 7 to 10, well, more than that, cut to about 50, 60,000 years later. And myth turns to rumor turns to legend, and then it's just all forgotten. I mean, it just goes away, and then it just turns into just wild speculation, and maybe some slight genetic memory or something like that possibly still lingers. It's an interesting idea. I wrote actually a short story on that. On that very idea, because it is something that, like, well, what if that actually did happen with a past civilization, and what if it just keeps happening over and over and over, right? We would have no way of knowing, and then of course on top of that, if you're not really here, in other words, the energy that makes up who you are as a human being is, somewhere else, right? Could be on the other side of the universe for all we know. It could be in the center of the Milky Way for all we know, right? The energy that makes up who you are, that inhabit this form, this sort of like Earth suit, if you want to think of it like that, Maybe by the time you come back and stuff, it's been 40,000 years because of time dilation. Who knows? Oh my gosh, it scrolled way down, so hopefully I didn't miss anybody. But small business needs a major revival. It absolutely does. I was just talking about this actually with someone today, that there's these videos surfacing of Walmarts. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's like these videos surfacing of all these Walmarts, and there's like nobody in the Walmart. And they're like, what the hell? It's like 2:00 in the afternoon. Why is there nobody here at the Walmart? Usually Walmart is packed, right? And it's people who work at Walmart that are kind of like going, dude, this place is usually just packed. We're usually just slammed with tons of customers. There's nobody here. Like, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if mass deportations actually bring down Walmart. That'd be pretty fascinating. It would be interesting to see if that's actually what did it. And then of course the question would be, would we be able to bring back small business? Once again, the small business is usually the people that are your movers and shakers, and they're the people that are wanting to really work and create a result. But once again, it goes back to that same question, like, okay, do those people have the same motivation, given that if they build it, or is it just going to be stolen from them? This is a legitimate question, and it's becoming more and more legit. Because we now have a civilization where we see everything instantly. We now have that civilization, and which is good and bad. But we also have an aging population. Aging isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means that the people who are aging are actually getting more experience. There's that word, right? And as we get a bit more experience, and we have instant communication, things like this, we start comparing notes. We start talking about these kinds of things, and then it becomes a little harder to try and manipulate people into doing a bunch of work so that you can rug them later, right? It gets a lot harder to do that. With all of this, and the internet has done a really good job of at least exposing quite a bit of that, right? It has. I mean, again, for better or for worse, it has happened. So people then have to question, is this going to be really worth my time? Because if I do all this work, there had better be a payoff, right? And especially since so many people are seeing what's happening now. How many of us are seeing this with the older generations, where they're like, dude, they worked their whole life and everything, and now they're gonna sit in some convalescent center, waiting to go into whatever comes next. And people are seeing that, younger people, so people under 55 are seeing that, and they're seeing it a lot, and they're starting to go, what is the point of all this? I mean, not a day goes by, you don't see it on TikTok, where somebody's like, dude, why are we doing all of this? What is this 60-hour-a-week nonsense? What is this constantly working? And what are we working for? What is the goal here? Yeah, so that's a challenge. That really is a challenge when you work people like that by, once again, every single time, they start building something and you rook them. I mean, you just dude, you're once you do that enough times, people start questioning. It's that marshmallow test. Remember the marshmallow test I gave you, the cookie test, the marshmallow donut test, whatever you want to call it. It's figuratively speaking, the little kid saying, yeah, I'll just go ahead and take them one marshmallow right now, thank you. I'm not going to wait around for your second marshmallow that you're probably not going to provide. That's going to be a tricky one. So yeah, I'd love to see small businesses come back, and I think that they would. I think they would come back, but it's going to be one of these things where you're going to have to leave small businesses alone. You're going to have to, and you can't inflate the currency, because small businesses are seeing that. All the small businesses right now that are on the internet complaining about, oh my God, my 40 of my guys didn't show up at my job site. Those are small business owners. Those are contractors. Those are small business owners. And 40 guys didn't show up on the job site. Only 3 people showed up. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Yeah, that's it. You're going to have to actually run a profitable business, which means you need to charge more money, which means you need to bring your wages way up. I mean, on and on and on, all these different kinds of things. So yeah. And it's a challenge. What happens when you create the illusion of wealth that we've had for so long, and then the illusion of wealth goes away? It's a big challenge. But yeah, in principle, I totally agree. I'd love to see more small businesses come back. Let's see here. Fundamentals of the Bible, family and one's place have been proven to be what? Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of good part of the fundamentals there. I mean, I got no real beef with that. If you remove regulations, thousands of small businesses pop up. Yeah, that's just it. If you get rid of the regulations, and you have to have a currency that they're not just going to keep conjuring, because otherwise you'll never be able to compete. Think of it like this. Let me give you a quick, for my small business people out there, or guys who want to go into business of any kind. Imagine running your business and your competitor across the street is being given subsidies. You can have the best product, and you will get a number of customers that want that. That's true. You will get that. But there's a lot of people, and we talked about this, I think, just last week. Perception is reality. And if they're seeing somebody else's price across the street is 40% lower, because they're getting a 40% subsidy on the back end of that, you're going to have a very difficult time competing. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it is much harder, and your margins are not going to be. You're not going to be able to sit on the back of your 3 or 4 deck yacht and just answer questions and send texts, and so you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to actually be pretty much doing all the work yourself, and you're not going to make the big payoff that you think. It's just how it is. And so, but yeah, so not just the regulations, excuse me, but the currency can't be manipulated. And for the longest time, it wasn't obvious that it was becoming manipulated. Now it's becoming so apparent. I don't know why anybody still takes dollars. I really don't. I remember, back in 2016, when during the first campaign of Trump, he was talking about China is a currency manipulator. Like, dude, so is the U.S. That's all the U.S. does, is manipulate currency. That's its whole claim to fame. That's why the U.S. has had this Americans have had this extremely lavish lifestyle. It doesn't seem like that from the perspective of a millennial and Zoomer, and even for a good chunk of Gen X, because they didn't really get that lavish lifestyle. That's pretty much a boomer thing. But lavish nonetheless, and it was certainly there. And this is kind of coming home to roost. So, but yeah, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see a lot of the regulations go away. The trick is going to be, once again, can they rug all the small business owners by just constantly manipulating the currency? This happened in another country. I'm live, so I have to be careful how I say this, but it happened in the former Soviet Union, and it happened in a big country that borders the Soviet Union. I think you all know what country I'm talking about. It happened during an administration that was back in the 50s kind of thing, and yeah, the small business owners started understanding the inflation that was being used where all the money was being printed was just to create all these socialist fantasies of free stuff to people. There's nothing in this world that's free, Every day, every single day on TikTok, I see somebody going about healthcare is a human right. Dude, from the billionaire's perspective, cheap labor is a human right to them, right? They demand the human right of cheap labor. Like, at a certain point, you have to stop that kind of stuff, and you have to start looking at dude, there's nothing that is free. Everything is going to be an energy transfer no matter what, and that's just reality. That is not a Republican talking point. That is a mathematical reality. So, that's just how it is. Let's see here. But welcome to all those, by the way, who joined. Let's see here. Free energy, Tesla knew. Maybe he did. I don't know. Free energy is a tough one. I have a tortured relationship with that whole idea, because I think about the idea of that energy is going to. Again, I work in that sector, so it's specifically electricity, and you don't get more out than what you put in. You always have a transfer loss, and at a certain point, you know, you're the most efficient electricity would be electricity that you make yourself, and you maintain it yourself. That would be that's about as close as you can get. And then of course you want to have the most efficiency, the most efficient electrical production that you can have, which would either be coal or natural gas, or actually technically propane, to convert those into electricity, or into heat and electricity. But yeah, and so I mean, again, you're still burning something to get that. The idea of the ambient sort of like electricity. I'm not saying that couldn't necessarily exist, but we talked about this about 30 minutes ago. That what if there was some previous civilization in the world that, like, oh yeah, look at all this free energy, and not realizing that it's actually causing all these problems because nothing is really actually free. It's just a thought. Let's see, Abraham gave birth. Well, yeah, men can do that. Abraham didn't, he himself did not give birth. I mean, he's a dude. And, but yeah, I mean, what Al Pacino just became a dad again at like 83. So yeah, that is possible. However, on the female side, that is not possible. That is, I don't want to say impossible, but it is it is improbable, if that makes any sense. Highly improbable. RF exposure settings tab, disclaim, I don't know what that means. RF exposure on settings. It's probably some TikTok message. If I got it wrong, to whomever, I don't know what to tell you. Let's see here. Chantilly, hi to you too. Let's see here. I hope I pronounced that right. I just looked at it really quickly. Bitcoin created to steal energy from other countries. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily stealing. I suppose it depends on if the other country is benefiting from it. Like this is like it's sort of like the immigration issue, and I'm going to approach it a little different with this. If you steal all of the top 10% of people from other countries, what are you leaving those other countries with? Yeah, I mean, that's just it. And so, in other words, if other countries kept all of literally their best and brightest, right? If they kept all their people, then those people who were really sharp would not just give up all of their energy, would they? Right? Like really smart people they know how to negotiate a bit better than someone saying, oh wow, you're going to give me some rocks? That's cool. I'm going to take these cool rocks, and yeah, all that oil, go ahead and take it. Yeah, that's the problem with this kind of stuff, is that, you know, it gets told from the perspective that the whole deportation thing is always told from the perspective of the billionaires, and the left don't understand they're doing this, which is weird. It's strange to me that the left don't even understand they're being manipulated. And they're being like heavily manipulated by the billionaire class, telling the story like, oh my, these poor people. No, if those are your best and brightest, then those are the people that actually know how to negotiate, and they know when they're being rooked, right? They know when they're being ripped off. And those are the people that countries need to keep, so that exactly stuff like that doesn't happen, so that you don't have other countries come in there and just start, you know, saying, hey, you know, what's what? This is all ours now, right? You found oil? Well, that's us. that's clearly ours, right? Yeah, I mean, because we own the world and whatever it is. You know, that'd have been a better song in the 80s. Instead of "We Are the World, We Own the World," that'd have been a better song in the 80s. I always appreciate what you have to say. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys being here. Let's see, USA Corp's own Russian hydroelectric system. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have enough information there to really make a comment. Coal is superior to natural gas and all. Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, it is really good because it does burn, you know, very efficiently. Particularly the really good coal. That stuff that's like almost silver. You know, it's like the really, really good stuff. Let's see here. There we go. Scroll. I enjoy tuning into your live videos. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I do my best. You know, it's tough to do these live because I don't. I'm just going off the top of my head with stuff, so I don't have any script. I don't do scripts, so I don't do script when I do videos. I just turn. I don't have time for that. Getting money instead of heat is strolling. Sorry, I might be misreading that. Jesus is the only truth there is. Possibly. He was definitely a really good economist. He was definitely a world-class economist. He doesn't get any credit for that. I've said this for a long time. Josh doesn't get anywhere near the credit that he should have in the economic sense, because he told everybody on many occasions why they were poor. It was an economic issue. They were being ripped off, and he told them on many occasions. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that stuff. If you want my conspiracy theory on that, I think a lot of those things that Josh said were probably never made it into the Bible, because they were stories that really specifically had to do with money. Like really, you know, like we all know the story of the tables and the whips chasing the bankers, and like we all know that story, and everybody loves to make fun of it because it's a fun story, right? I mean, I would imagine from his perspective that wasn't fun. It was more like, he genuinely was really, really, really angry with this, because you're telling your people who are probably not up to speed on everything, you're lying to them and telling them that God says to do this, and so you're ripping them off in the name of God. Well, so if in fact Josh is God, let's assume for a second here, you put yourself in that position. How would you feel if somebody came to you and says, "Oh, well, they told me the guy said it was cool to rip me off because you said it was cool"? You would be like, no, I did not say that. No, I did not say any such thing. And who is telling you these lies? Because that's a problem. So, yeah, I mean, but I don't think he gets anywhere near the credit that he should for the money yesterday. Do you think that the trade war will hurt Trump's popularity? Maybe. And the tariff. So here's the challenge: is that technically speaking, Trump is correct in that, tariffs. If you have sort of an expanding economy. Remember, the U.S. was an expanding economy because the people were expanding. The number of people, the volume of people were expanding in the 1800s, early 1900s, on up until basically the 1960s. There was an actual economic expansion, not just the expansion of the money supply. Right? There's a bunch of people out there that get confused and they say, "Oh, well, look, we can expand the economy." You expand an economy one way, and that's to add people. You have to have people to expand your economy. Like, even just becoming more efficient, that still doesn't expand the economy. It makes the economy more efficient, and that's great. That's great to be more efficient. Dude, a physicist, man, I love efficiency. I'm all about that. But that doesn't expand anything. Expansion comes from actually adding people to your economy. So when in the 1800s, really from the 1700s forward up until about the 1960s, the U.S. was actually expanding in terms of the number of people, number of births over deaths. Right? That's what you're looking at. Births over deaths. That's just simple demographics, simple people counting. So tariffs work like that because you have a bunch of other countries wanting to get access to that market because, oh, look, it's an expanding market. It's an emerging market. That's true. So it was an emerging market. We are not an emerging market any longer. We are in like empire collapse mode at this point. We are in sort of the I know everybody loves to say late stage capitalism. It's really not. It's late stage empire. That's really more accurate. It has nothing to do with any kind of fake economic system. It's more just when you shift from being an economy to being an empire, right? Because empires have to stay alive. Economies churn and burn. Guys come and go, right? Billionaires rise and they fall, right? Now we don't have that. Now we just have everything goes up all the time. Everything up all the time. Real estate always goes, it's a rule. It has to go up every single time, right? Like that's the thing, right? And it's because of the idea that, once again, back in the day, the U.S. actually was expanding. Now we are not. Well, a lot of other countries aren't doing that either. So I don't know that tariffs are going to hit quite the same way that they would have back in the day. We'll see. Again, I'm personally not convinced, although I'm all about the idea of eliminating income taxes. I think we should do that. I think income taxes are absolutely wrong. We shouldn't be doing them. And I'd love to see us do something like that. And if we wanted to try and replace it with tariffs, even though my question is always going to be, why are we trying to replace any of this? Why don't you just shrink the government completely? Like shrink it down to an almost infinitesimal size, like, you know, like fun size, you know, like shrink government down into like, you know, like something to where, shrink it down enough to where police are genuinely afraid of people. Right? When they're genuinely terrified and they don't want to pull you over anymore, then we have finally achieved a small enough government. That's what you want. That's what you want. Is you know, people fearing, you know, the government fearing the people, not the people fearing the government. Well, so that's how you would do something like that. But unfortunately, a lot of this is predicated on debt. The entire system is based on debt. That comes from nothing, it's conjured from nothing, and it's by a handful of banking cartels that conjure this money out of nothing and then lend it with interest, and then it gets pushed into I'm like, you understand? I mean, like, and I've been over this a lot on my channel. I mean, I've been over this a ton, but that's when it's happening. So that's sort of my long-winded way of saying we'll see what happens. I'm not 100% convinced on it. But I would like to see a lot of the taxes go away. You know, income taxes, property taxes, and death taxes should all, or what do they call it, estate taxes, those should go away. There's no need to have them. And income taxes actually now, and I actually sent this out on former Bird site, where I pointed this out, that income taxes aren't even really needed anymore. When you have a handful of companies that pretty much own all of the means of production, they can just charge whatever they want right there, and especially nowadays where they're going to use facial recognition apparently to have people, you know, pay like different prices while wandering through Kroger or something like that. Like, yeah, I mean, do you really need to have an income tax if you're literally controlling the means of production of everything? All right. And of course, I mean, again, my leftist followers all say, oh, it's the corporate oligarchy and everything. I keep pointing out to everybody, this is exactly what happened in the Soviet Union. It's the same thing. It's just that you're calling it a corporate oligarchy as opposed to a government oligarchy. It is the same outcome. The outcome is always the same. I don't know why nobody can understand that. Like, there's this weird cult of people that if I talk about this stuff, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They're like, no, it's all because of fascism or something. Like, dude, the outcome is always the same. You're gonna have to get past these different isms. Isms are farming techniques. It is easy to negotiate with. Yeah, no kidding. It's easier anyway. Depends on if someone calls your bluff, I suppose. Suppose that, you know, like if you're actually, you know, like what if you're just one of the crazy eye guys, like, do it. I hate being here anyway. Do it. That'd be pretty funny actually to negotiate with, especially if you don't know. You know, like, I mean, maybe you are dealing with some crazy man in some third world country. Nothing I'm told is supposed to make sense. Nothing I'm told that is supposed to make sense does. So what do you see? What do we see? So I want to see the system. Well, that's just it. We'll see how long it takes for that to happen. It's going to go on as long as it has to. You know, I think I just did a video on this. Like, it's going to go on as long as it has to. All of this madness that you're seeing, it's going to go on as long as it has to. It has until people have enough of it. That's just the end of it. They're just going to have enough of it. Once they get a belly full of it, then eventually they'll start saying, nope, we want actual palpable change. Eventually, I look forward to a day. This is what I look forward to. I look forward to the day where the suits and ties don't matter anymore, where people are so sick of politicians trying to give political answers, trying to dress it up, trying to impress people. Like, I'm waiting for the day when people just say, nope, I want to see substance. Dude, I so don't care. I don't care what your hair looks like. I don't care what your suit. I don't care what color your suit is. I don't care if you've ever made even $25 an hour. I want to see substance. I want to see actual, like for real, like people. I want to see you actually doing something that is genuinely helpful for people. And helpful can come in a lot of different ways. But number one usually is leave people alone and stop ripping them off. That's typically right at the top. Leave them alone, stop ripping them off. That's it. Somebody was complaining about the healthcare system, and as it's necessary, right? I mean, the healthcare system in the U.S. sucks. Totally sucks. You get no argument out of me on that one. The solution isn't just more government, though. Your solution would be like, dude, why don't you just stop ripping everybody off? Stop demanding all these ridiculous healthcare gimmicks, because it's all it is. It's just a gimmick. None of that stuff really does anything. You end up spending more money in your deductibles and stuff. No, just stop giving them money, and let the prices collapse. Get rid of all the regulations, and a lot of those prices will come down. Let's see here, magnetism holds a key to generation of free energy. Maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of tricks out there of guys doing these kinds of things, and they're magic tricks is what they are. It's sort of like, look up the Mechanical Turk. Mechanical Turk, T-E-R-K. I think it's either T-U-R-K or T-E-R-K. Anyway, look up Mechanical Turk, and that'll give you it'll kind of teach you a cautionary tale on this, that a lot of these things, that people think are real they're really not. They're, if these things were able to, because the speculation is, oh, well, the government would never allow it. Like, it depends. I mean, because if someone can actually produce that kind of stuff, the first thing they would do is do what I would do. I would be powering my own house. That'd be the first thing I'd be doing, and then I'd be powering my neighbors, and it would just start growing like a virus. That's exactly how I would do it. North Korea showed Navy its nukes, and the Pentagon ran away. Yeah, that's what I mean. All it takes is someone who's willing to, like, it's the showdown, right? It's the Old West. Or, go watch, not necessarily the John Ford movies, but if you watch the old, TV Westerns and things like that, you see the two guys going to do a showdown, like, that's a good example of that. I mean, it's when you finally, like, this is it, man. We're not, one of us ain't leaving, dude. I'm all for the idea of Thunderdome when it comes to the world leaders, man. I mean, like seriously, like 2 men enter, 1 man leave kind of thing. Like, dude, one of you is coming out. We're not having this anymore. We're not doing this nonsense anymore. We're not doing a bunch of fixed fights. We're not doing, Jake Paul shoves, George Foreman down a flight of stairs. Yeah, we're not doing that, dude. We're not doing any of that nonsense. Like 2 men enter, 1 guy comes out, and that's the end of this nonsense. We're not doing any more of this. I think Doge is trying to shrink government. It's a start, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see if they get it, if they actually achieve it. I'm curious myself, actually, to watch this. I mean, I'm an open-minded kind of guy. I mean, I have my problems with a lot of this stuff, and I have no problem at all stating my opinion, but we'll see what happens with it. If it's just going to be smoke and mirrors, or like, are you actually going to shrink the government? Because shrinking the government means also getting rid of laws. Because if you're just going to create more and more laws, but you're supposedly shrinking the government, that tells me all you're doing is monitoring people electronically. That's all that tells me. Like, oh, you're becoming more efficient. Great, yes, at imprisoning everybody with their phones and their laptops and their computers. In other words, you're creating a sort of a panopticon, right? So if you're going to create a system like that, which of course is what they're doing, and they're pretty obvious about this. It's like, oh, but it's the corporate oligarchs, man. They're all owned by the bankers, dude. All you have to find out where somebody's loyalties lie is find out how much money they owe somebody. If they owe somebody money, their loyalty lies with that. Especially if they swore some kind of a crazy oath or something like that. We went over that last week. But yeah, I mean, look at the oaths these people swear and everything. Which is, again, it's kind of why I got to think about it like that. I mean, like, is this type of simulation, this reality, whatever it is this in fact, like, because it seems it seems like we're just kind of moving up the ladder of, like, approaching the final boss kind of thing. So, but yeah, you're right. It may be a little bit too little, too late. It's possible. Government's a tool, not subject of the game. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like fire. A dangerous servant and a fearful master. No question. If the police fear pulling people over, we all become like California. No kidding. I don't know. I mean, I live in South Texas, and people down here drive pretty fast as it is. It's almost annoying how fast they drive. You know, and because this is in my neighborhood. You know, I mean, I have neighbors that do this, that like go flying past me on a city or a residential street, and they pull in their driveway 5 seconds before I pull in mine. It's just weird. Now California, they've got some crazy people there. It's pretty state. It's crazy people. That's where so. Rich hijacked the government. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's the bankers. It's bankers. I mean, it's just anybody who's lending. Again, if you're the one lending, you're the one in control. That's it. You know, your money at the bank, for example. What does it say at the bank? It says FDIC. Your deposit is insured by the full faith and credit of the United States government. In other words, it doesn't say it's insured by, you know, all the cash that the government has and a bunch of gold that they have. Nope, it says full faith and credit. In other words, it's insured by hopes and dreams of one day we'll, you know, one day we'll be rich, right? It's just madness. Let's see here. No such thing as left and right. Yeah, it's really not. I mean, I catch myself saying that stuff all the time, just because it's fun, and some of it's me trolling, but it's easy. It's expeditious for me to be able to say it that way, because then people kind of understand it. So it's more of a colloquialism. But you're right. Yeah, there isn't any such thing as a left and right, if you want to think of it in those terms. I mean, there's a really cool video that showed the political spectrum as being more of like kind of like a wedge, and, you know, zero government over here and like total government over here. And when you start defining terms, you find out that most people are a bunch of crazy statists who just want to be slaves, or they want to be slave owners. That's some of them, but the majority are people who just want to be in the middle. They're like, I don't want to own slaves, but I don't want to be a slave. I just want to be a slave driver and you know, just have a nice life and you know, just do what I'm told and blah 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 blah. That's what most people want, actually. It takes a lot of guts to actually want to get away from that system. It takes an enormous amount of courage to get away from a system like that and say, nope, I'm going to go do my own thing. I want nothing to do with any of you people. I think you are all crazy. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. SSR was hijacked by the Trotskyites. Yeah, probably. I mean, the outcome is, once again, always the same. It's usually, whenever you give a small group of people, no matter who it is, I don't care what your politics are, if you give a small group of people a bunch of control over a large group of people, it will always lead to despotism. This is, of course, why you were supposed to have a Second Amendment. I saw that Jon Stewart, I guess, was interviewing some really weak-handed senator. Like, dude, I mean, I could have flayed Jon Stewart just standing here with like no notes. I mean, I could totally own Jon Stewart on the gun issue. Are you kidding? Like, dude, that was a weak argument. Like, you're saying there shouldn't be any background checks. My answer would be, nope, shouldn't be any of the gun. Shouldn't be any of that stuff. You want the police to be terrified? Yes, I do. I do. There's where else do you want me to go with that? I don't care. Like, well, but the streets will be unsafe. I don't care. Show me anywhere that you have the right to safe streets. You don't have the right to that. You have the right to build your community and maintain it, but you have to do that. That implies responsibility, right? This is the part that the libertarians forget. Libertarians want no responsibility, as opposed to wanting freedom and liberty. Freedom and liberty means you have to have responsibility to go with that. Yeah, it's not the same thing. So, USSR doubled its life expectancy, and housing cost was 9% of your income. That's right. They also would turn in their neighbors to get a nicer apartment. They would make up crimes, you know, for their neighbors. Come on, this is TikTok nonsense. There we go. You know, I mean, like, is that the kind of world that you think is acceptable? Where it's like, oh, well, you know, thanks for turning in your neighbor and stuff. Here, look, you can have their apartment now and all their stuff, because we're going to just disappear them. We're going to banish them to some gulag somewhere. Yeah, I mean, again, none of that is appealing to me. You know, you just have more people, as long as they're armed heavily. If you really want to, all you people out there who preach this crap, I'm not picking on you specifically, I'm just pointing out, like, everybody who preaches this madness, if you seriously want to solve wealth inequality, then you want to solve the armament inequality first. And it equalizes things very quickly. And there's no more billionaires to like, it just, that's the thing. It's like, well, it'll create create all these problems. Like, yeah, okay, but I mean, we have the CEO thing. Everybody's happy about the CEO thing. Why are you happy about the CEO thing? I'm indifferent to it, but I'm like, why are you happy about it? Like, well, because like, okay, well, then it sounds to me like we're on the same page then as far as the gun control issue is concerned. Sounds like we're on the same page, right? Don't FAFO, right? Don't become a healthcare CEO and then deny a bunch of claims because you're running a Ponzi scheme. Don't become a banker and run a Ponzi scheme, and you won't have to worry about that 10 out of 10 FAFO, right? Right? I mean, just common sense. Yes, 200. Yeah, I no kidding. How is anything like the USSR? Well, I just explained all that. What I'm telling you. So, I mean, you're talking about the means of production, if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, means of production. I mean, if you always have a small group of people controlling that, and then trying to central plan everything, I don't care what ism you call it. You can call it corporatism, communism, capitalism, fascism. I don't care what ism you call it. The outcome is going to be the same. You lose incentive for your business owners. Your small businesses go away because, well, how do you compete? Once again, going back, how do you compete with your competitors who are the money is being printed from nothing, given to them in order to keep them around and have you go out of business? How do you do that? And in the case of the Soviets, they just got rid of them. Nowadays we can't do it quite that easily. They have to actually come up with a reason. Oh, well, your business failed because blah, 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 blah. No, it failed because you were subsidizing my competitors. That's why it failed. You kept subsidizing my competitors with all kinds of stock market gimmicks. How does a stock market gimmick work? It's really simple. You tell everybody, hey, we're going to charge you a bunch of money in your taxes, or you can put it in the stock market. You can gamble it away in the stock market, and there it won't be taxed until later on. And then that way it's so-called tax-free, and then you gamble it and you feel rich because the number go up, yeah, so you feel rich. That's it. And of course, the money goes into these companies that have no business having investors to that extent. This is a complicated topic, but I mean, I'll weigh in on it. Because I've explained this stuff like dozens of times. If you go back and find old videos and stuff, dude, like dozens of times I've been through this. When you have companies, you're investing in them. You're supposedly investing in them, right? It's because you want to own a piece of that company, because you genuinely believe that company is going to be profitable. That is not how the stock market works anymore. Now it goes into a mutual fund and then it gets blasted into a sector. Who the hell knows if any of those companies are profitable? In fact, that's a selling point that a lot of these people make when they trot them into your new employment. They say, oh, look, here's Bob. He's going to talk to you about our new 401k program. It's going to make you guys all rich someday, maybe, possibly, whatever that means. I mean, your currency is not going to be worth anything. We're just going to print the currency to worthlessness. But boy, you'll be rich on paper. And yeah, so Bob comes in and he says, well, it just goes into a sector. That way you don't have to worry about if that company is profitable or not. What? That's not how investing is supposed to work. Investing is supposed to work because you genuinely, as a sophisticated investor, are willing to take your risk capital, hence the term capitalism, take your risk capital, in other words, money you are prepared to lose every single bit of. It says in every single 401k that you have ever signed, you agree to lose every penny here. You investors can and do lose some, all, or more of their investment. It says it right there in black and white, usually in bold, italicized, underscored. I mean, it's usually how it works. So those gimmicks get all that money, that now loose money that just gets thrown into sectors, props a bunch of companies up that should have gone out of business probably 25 years ago. How do you compete with your competitors that are being subsidized to that level because you're effectively forcing everybody to pump all their money into the so-called stock market. This is just one of these things that, like, if you study money long enough, you start studying the origins of money. And when you start studying the origins of it, then you figure out like how all this stuff goes together, and you're like, oh yeah, this doesn't work at all. It's a scam. It is a scam. Not the money. Well, the money can be a scam. The dollar's a scam, most definitely, because it's conjured nothing. It's not worth anything. It has no mathematical or intrinsic value of any kind. So that's how that works. So so when you look at any of these other countries that have tried this kind of stuff, it's usually what happens is they start just conjuring money to pay for stuff, to pay for all these promises they made to people, and then they eventually run out of everybody else's money, and then everything just sort of collapses. This has happened in the Soviet Union, happened to, it happened in the 70s with the country that borders the Soviet Union. It has a big border with it. And so Nixon had to go over there and open relations to basically bail it out because, he also had the Bretton Woods breakdown. The dollar basically broke down and everybody wanted their gold back. Nixon had to convince the entire world that, no, the dollar is actually better than gold. And people bought it. But it had to be backed by cheap slave labor. What luck? There's a country with 1 billion people, cheap slave labor. Yeah, it always ends up. That's what ends up happening. Usually, that's kind of how this stuff all works. And then eventually, if the fear goes away, so does the system. Just like that, just like a light came on. That's all it is. Let's see here. Who in the USSR was compared to? I don't know. In the USSR, comparable to Peter Thiel? I don't know. I mean, probably some general actually who got away with literally, in the most literal sense, whatever they wanted. I mean, look it up. Go look up. Look up a Soviet economist named Yuri Molsev, the late Yuri Molsev. He was a Soviet defector. I've mentioned him on many occasions. Look up his lectures. Look him up. I mean, it's right from the horse's mouth. I mean, he was a high, he was an official, in the state government. And yeah, I mean, like everything that he talks about, like, dude, it's the same kind of thing. It's just, we call them billionaires here in the US. They would call them, state officials there. They would call them, commanders or commandants or whatever crazy titles. Don't get caught up on the titles, man. Always watch the actions. Think of how many billionaires right now are trying to say that they empathize. They're totally down with the American people, while at the same time selling them out. Watch their actions, dude, not their words. Always important. Gorby's daughter lives in Germany after her. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it was Gorbachev. I think it was, I can't remember the name. There was one that was in between. It was right before Gorbachev, and he took away the fear, and the whole thing just collapsed as soon as the fear went away. They're like, "Oh, cool! We no longer have to go to work anymore. We're done with this." Industrialized hypocrisy, that hit like a truck. Yeah, that's the only way I can describe it. That's what it seems like to me. When you have people telling you one thing and then doing another, and it's become so common now. Particularly with the billionaire class, the banker class, the political class, all these people all working together. They all work together, make no mistake about that. Bernie Sanders is not on your side, I promise you. I promise you. Bernie Sanders, AOC, none of these people are on your side. None of them are. They don't speak like they're on your side. They talk like politicians. All of them. Every one of them talk like politicians. Like I said, wait until I want to see the day when someone actually talks to you like a human like a human being. When that happens, then you'll know. Then you'll know you've actually transcended something. But no, not when these guys have all focus groups and they've got, there's that, I don't know if I can say it on TikTok, but there's that lobbying group that you can never say the name of. It starts with an A, ends with a PAC, and you can't really talk about them, but they have like hundreds of their agents like all over Congress all the time. Yeah, don't get around me telling me none of these people are on your side. None of them. I mean, if they can't do stuff like this and actually talk to you as opposed to at you, they're not on your side. That's just reality. It's just you have to watch their actions, and their actions betray them every single time. But yes, industrialized hypocrisy is the only phraseology I could think of that accurately hits that. But how did German jumpstart the economy in World War II so rapidly? There's two things that happened actually. The biggest one was the ending of usury. True story. That's what happened. The ending of just making charging interest illegal. That's the first, and that actually did jumpstart everything. Here's the challenge with lionizing that a little bit. It's not the usury part of that. I mean, any usury is actually bad, and I've covered the usury thing a couple of times here. But with the German economy pre-World War II, the challenge was they were doing the same kind of thing. They were just being benevolent about it. Now that only works if you have somebody who's a leader that's like that. Let's say for a second, for the sake of argument, just for the sake of argument here, that mustache guy was truly like this benevolent leader who genuinely was a man of the people and wanted to bring the people everything they wanted. Number one, there's no mathematical way to do that. That's true. That it's just not mathematically possible. Number two, it only survives as long as that guy does, right? This is the problem with every time there's a Louis XIV, there's a Louis XV. That's the problem with it. Like, it only runs for so long. It isn't an actual, it isn't a mindset of the people. So the U.S., again, I can only speak to the U.S. on this one, but the mindset of the U.S., of the founders, was we wanted people to be intelligent and you wanted people to think for themselves. And they all understood that they had rights, okay? Not that the Constitution does not give you any rights. The Constitution gives you no rights. It is recognizing that by virtue of your humanity, you already have said rights. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to own a Stinger missile and like suicide drones. You have all of that right, and you have the right to literally throw off the shackles of an oppressive government when you feel that you are oppressed. That exists by virtue of your humanity. It is not given to you by any government. It is recognized that is God-given or given by the virtue of your humanity. Either way you want to look at that. No different than why cats are born with claws. Okay, whether it's one of that little kitten, that little super dangerous kitten that lives in Africa, I can't remember what they're called. They're this little kitten about this big, but they're like the most deadly hunter in like all of the animal kingdom, and with like a 60% success rate in hunting, or all the way up to a giant saber-toothed tiger that doesn't exist anymore. Like they're all born with their defenses built in. Human beings have to use tools and implements, such as javelin rocket launchers. So, when people are able to do that, then they're able to say, I have a just claim to my rights because I can actually defend it. But as far as, not to get too far afield on that, but to answer your comment, that's just really it. It's ending usury. What ends usury in this country right now, in this world, in the entire planet? What ends usury? There's one thing I can think of that does that, and that's hard money. One thing. It'll end it. Ends it faster than anything. It'll end it wholesale faster than absolutely anything out there. Hard money that's verifiable ends usury because nobody will lend it out. We went over this with Henry Ford. Henry Ford offered a bunch of money for Ford. He said, sure, no problem, pay me in gold. And every bank turned Durant down. That is such a mind-blowingly massive lesson, and there's a reason why that is not taught in I don't think there's a college in this country that teaches that lesson. There's probably not even even when the Ivy League douchebag schools don't teach that lesson, because that lesson is absolutely spectacular. It's probably the single greatest lesson that you could ever get. Would be hearing that. Like, why would the banks not lend Durant gold? Because they didn't have it. That's why. They didn't have it. It was being conjured from nothing, and they didn't have anywhere near enough gold to back that. And that would have single-handedly made Henry Ford one of the most powerful men, if they did that, the most powerful men in the entire world, and it would have done it permanently. He'd have been on par with the banking dynasties, and yeah, they can't have that. It's one thing that you will notice. You will note this about banking dynasties: they absolutely hate competition. And so there you go. Yes, I'm waiting for that day too. Yeah, as am I. I am most definitely waiting for that day. I want to see it happen. I want to see when people finally get past all that crap, all that show, all that nonsense, all that pomp, all that crap. Just, dude, no. I want to see stuff get done. I want to see things get done. That's, you know, I'm tired of this idea. Thank you, by the way, whoever it was that something popped up and somebody gave me something. Anyway, whatever it was, thank you. I appreciate it. The people, yeah, there we go. This rose. I don't know what it is, but I appreciate it. And let's see here. Yeah, two wings of the same bird. Exactly. That's exactly. It's the only way that I can think of. If you watch their actions, they all seem to be kind of in bed with each other and all this kind of stuff. You know, that one guy, right? I know you can't say his name on the internet apparently, but it's the island guy, the guy who had that whole island program that was in prison and then just, you know, that guy. Where is the information on this? Where is all this? Like, why are people, you're not helping anybody. In fact, actually, it's just making it worse by not releasing that. It's making it worse for absolutely everybody. Thank you so much, by the way. So how, you know, like, where is all that information? I'd like to know. I'd like to know exactly. The biggest problem I think that actually exists with that, this is my speculation, pure speculation. I have nothing to back this up. Do not take this as gospel. I have absolutely nothing to back this up. What I think it is, I think that at the parties, those so-called parties, if you want to call them that, I mean, like, I'm just going to use that word because, for lack of a better word, so call it a filler word or a placeholder word. I wonder if that at these parties were like probably judges who were who were sitting at the same time, or who were presiding over a case involving one of the cartel people, partying at the same time. A clear conflict of interest. And I wonder how many times that happened. Right? Among all the other stuff. Other stuff that we can't talk about here on TikTok. But among all the other stuff. Right? I wonder how many, like, so-called maybe political enemies were there at the same partying, you know, having a great time doing whatever's they're doing on this island that we're pretty sure what was going on. I don't mean just political rivals as in, you know, like, oh, Lindsey Graham was there with, you know, whatever, you know, Crenshaw or something. I don't know, you know, not Crenshaw, but you get the idea. You know, I don't mean that. I'm talking about, like, maybe world leaders that possibly were there, and it's like, why would you have been at the same party together? Are you two buddies? Yeah. Makes me wonder. When was the last time boomers, or when the last of the boomers takes their last breath, we might start. It'll be a while, actually, just because, I mean, I give boomers a lot of grief. I would love to see a lot of boomers start waking up. I would love them to start seeing that, like, a lot of this stuff is fake. It'd be kind of cool. It would be really cool to see boomers start taking some of this stuff seriously. Takes a lot of people to overcome. Takes a lot for people to overcome what they're being raised by. Yeah, that's it. And that's of course, that's the boomer thing. Exactly. I mean, I give boomers a lot of grief. That's true. But I would like to see them actually start coming back from some of this stuff and start realizing that, dude, you guys are going to have to change. You're going to have to change your voting habits. You cannot vote for this kind of stuff anymore. The old days, and it's going to be tough to change your ways, but this old way of thinking about politics has got to stop. It's got to stop. These people that are trying to give you safe answers and sparing your feelings and puppy therapy rooms and all that crap, dude, come on. That's got to stop. That absolutely has to stop. It's very destructive. Amazon's Mechanical Turk. No, it's actually no, it's a Mechanical Turk. It was a scam, basically. It was a chess scam. There was a guy that was actually in the box and he was playing chess. It's like they were trying to convince people that, oh, it's a machine that does everything. See, it's automated. It's like, it wasn't automated. Kind of like the automation that it was like Amazon was supposed to be doing automation, and it turns out it was just a bunch of Indians in India that were keep tracking. Like, it wasn't really automation. It was just, you know. Let's see here. That's what happened when Creed took over. If you guys are in discussion with each other, I'm trying to pass by that because some of you guys are talking to each other and everything. So I'm doing the best I can. We're in the throes of a dying society. Yeah, it's on life support, I guess is the way I would look at it. I'm not a complete fatalist, but we're definitely we're definitely at the point where we need to have like Rufus from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure come back and say, hey, it almost wasn't, man. Let's fix this. Yeah, full faith and credit, exactly. It's I think that we can survive together. Yeah, we can. I mean, people can get along just fine and stuff. You don't have to. That's the thing, is like not everybody has to like everybody. We don't have to like each other. But as I pointed out before, even if I don't like my neighbor, I'm going to help him put his house is on fire, I'm going to help him put it out, even if I don't like him. And it's not just to save my house, but it's also because I would want the same thing in return, even if I don't like the guy. Right? That's the common sense part. And I think people instinctively know that. I do think that there is an instinct that we do understand that no man is really an island, right? I mean, we can try to be as self-sufficient as we want to be, but we still have that to deal with, and we are still human. That's true. How long do you think the U.S. has before it collapses? Unknown. I've done several videos. That's number three question I get. It really is. I get that. That's probably the number 3 question. It's probably number 2 now. Question I get, as some random internet guy, like, how much longer is this going to go? Like, it's going to go as long as it has to. Until I would say, until people realize that the currency is fake, that the U.S. dollar is fake, and all of this has been a colossal problem, and we have to actually go back and let the illusion of wealth go away. That's what it's going to take. Corby did everything to kill us. Yeah, I mean, he probably did, yeah. Your mother is as too controlling. I don't know what that means, sorry. I haven't seen, I don't know what that means, only because I haven't seen my mom in like 35 years. So, more than that. Roman bit at the circuses, yeah, no kidding. Bernie, the only one calling Bernie, the only one calling out Israel for war crimes. Yeah, that's true. I mean, he is. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Mustache guy guy's funny from Rockefeller. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like this is sort of the challenge with all this kind of stuff. Like, all of this, let's assume that that's true, again, because the older I get, frankly, the less I believe any of the history I'm taught, and that includes almost from anywhere. It's because it's getting very difficult to believe any of the sources from anything, because by virtue of the internet, right, which we already talked about. And we talked about this earlier on, so actually it goes way back to the very beginning of the conversation when I talked about the idea of like everything feels scripted and canned and kind of weird. Like, yeah, how do we believe that any of it is true anymore? So I can only go by what I know of, and I can comment on the idea that maybe that happened. Okay, if it did, it's still bankers in control of it, meaning that it's like it doesn't matter. It's always going to be somebody to whom you owe money, and if you owe money to them, then forget it. You're going to do he who pays the piper calls tune, right? So yeah, that's how it works. Truck driver. I don't know what we're talking about, dude. Sorry. You can go on. You can move to some other channel anytime you want, dude. So, and let's see here. I'm just gonna skip by this guy because I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Yeah, I mean, okay, so Cash says he's going to release the Jepston files. I guess we're going to call it that way, so I don't put a Steen or anything like that. But yeah, maybe we'll see. I mean, I'd be really fascinated to see what actually happens with it. Trump on his last right. Let's see here. The Gong. Sorry, I'm just reading through some of this stuff. I think some of you guys are talking to each other. So I'm having to kind of scroll through to try and answer some of this stuff. What platform is he reading off of? I don't have a platform. Let's see, I'm a boomer, 62, with Gen X opinions. Yeah, it happens. We were misinformed. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it was really terrible, and I'm glad to see that there are some boomers that are starting to really grasp this, and they're starting to see what's happened here. That this has been really terrible, and it's going to be terrible for a lot of people. So. We're in the middle of Zionist perestroika. Yeah, there is, again, like I said, I don't have any issue personally with any other country. I do have an issue with other countries, like literally putting people in our House and Senate to control their every move and basically buy them off. That I have a problem with. Now, that's a problem. I don't think he reads the TikTok comments. I do read the TikTok comments. You weren't patient enough. TikTok is not a platform for patient people. So, or is it? I think that's how it works. If you're impatient, TikTok is the perfect platform for you. But if you if you don't have patience, then I'm not that guy. Like, right? I mean, I'm not gonna do something like that, and I'm certainly not gonna dumb a bunch of stuff down. Have you ever watched the documentary? I have, actually. I went through it a while back, and it's interesting. As someone who follows film pretty closely, I can spot some of the propagandistic part of it. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm not making any judgments either way. I'm making a film judgment, in that, like, the use of music, the use of color and lighting and contrast and so on within it ends up coming across in spots as propaganda, as opposed to equal and balanced history. And history, once again, I mean, I don't believe that there's any such thing as good guys or bad guys. It's the Jon Stewart thing all over again. Like, well, how do we know if the good guys are going to own all the guns? There is no such thing. In my mind, there is no such thing as good guys. There is no such thing as bad guys. There's just people that are really horrible. And you are all part of the same compost heap. And so, and I'm not saying that to be mean to all people that are following. I'm talking about, like, just people in general, right? This is kind of a story with no good guys anywhere. People can do good stuff. Charles Ponzi, the guy who ran the Ponzi scheme, you know, a little factoid about him. Some of you know this story. He actually did this before he became the infamous Charles Ponzi that we all know today. He literally gave a skin graft to I think it was a woman who was a burn victim, off of his back. He quite literally gave the skin off of his back to someone else for free. Is he a good guy or a bad guy? If an armed robber goes into a store and robs a store, right, and then he doesn't get caught, is he a good guy or a bad guy? If an armed robber goes into a store and then runs out and gets caught, is he a good guy or a bad guy? That's the problem with this kind of stuff. I mean, not to get like hyper philosophical. I mean, I don't particularly like philosophy, but I can do it. And I would ask that question of anybody, like, okay, so how exactly, what is good and what is bad when it comes to this kind of stuff? So, I mean, again, and I try to be as even-handed as I can with particularly with history, because I don't think there was necessarily a good guy anywhere. And just like with World War I, my opinion of World War I over the years has kind of changed into the idea that I think what actually happened was 3 countries went broke. And they all started blaming each other for everything, and it eventually got turned into a political war. And the U.S. wanted nothing to do with it. In fact, actually, one of the failed amendments was proposed in 1916. I just saw this, actually, and I just reposted it. Was an attempted amendment to the Constitution that in 1916, and it said, hey, anybody who wants to vote for all these wars, if you vote for all this, you can sign up and you can go over there. And, you have to be a volunteer and you go over there and you deal with all of it. That's American sentiment. American sentiment was actually staunchly anti-war. In fact, Wilson, his whole campaign, the centerpiece of Woodrow Wilson's campaign was, we're not going to be involved in the European theater. That was the centerpiece of his entire campaign. We're not going to be involved in it. We're not going to, the U.S. is not going to be involved in anything to do with the European theater of World War I. Period. That was the centerpiece of his campaign. Won him the election, actually, as a result of that, because Americans didn't want to deal with any of that. So, no, I mean, then Lusitania gets, sinks because it's carrying armaments over to Europe. Germany specifically says, hey, if we see Lusitania, we are going to sink her. They posted ads. I mean, just now that kind of history I can actually kind of believe, because it's like there's actual photographic evidence of all of it. So, but as far as other history and stuff, I have a tough time with all of it. Let's see here. May have some accurate info, but it's that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I mean, I take it both ways. I understand it, and I don't judge any of the clans, right? I mean, I don't clan, so I'm not going to judge any of them. Just the way it is. Let's see here. There's no good guys or bad guys, only our side, and that's kind of it. That's kind of how I look at it. It's it's just whatever side you happen to be on at the time, and that can change for people too. So I mean, with treason's a matter of dates, right? No Escape from the 90s. I have seen that movie. It's actually a brilliant movie. It's based on a book. I've never read the book, but I know it's based on the book, and the reason I know that is I had to look it up, because it was like, no, this is too good a plot line to simply be just to come from the quill of some Hollywood hack. And it's like, sure enough, no, it was a book. That's there wasn't any Hollywood hackery involved, and yes, it's actually an interesting movie. I like Ernie Hudson, and I like Ray Liotta, but yeah, the storyline is really interesting. It's definitely a fascinating idea to think about. I think about Earth like that a lot. I think of Earth as a prison quite a bit. I spend a lot of my time thinking maybe that's why we haven't really been back to the moon or any of that kind of stuff. Maybe, I kind of think about it like in those terms. The radiation barrier that keeps people from escaping, right? Although I guess we still have this idea we're going to move everybody to Mars. I mean, resources be damned. I guess we're going to do that. So it's weird, but yes, I have seen it actually. It's a brilliant movie. One of these days I'll actually cover that, because I posed that question to TikTok followers and stuff, and I'll put something together. More than likely, fair warning for anybody out there, if I do something that is movie related, I will probably post a clip of it, here on TikTok, but the whole thing, because it'll be in long form. Some of the stuff's going to be pretty long. It'll be, on another, on YT or something like that. Only because of the time frame. It's difficult to, especially for some movies, it's very difficult to compress them down into 5-10 minute sound bites, especially if it's really kind of a high concept thing, such as No Escape, where it's okay, that's worth maybe fleshing that out a little bit, in my opinion. My old Marine Corps buddy used to say people are basically no damn good. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of how I see it, and it doesn't mean that people can't work together, and it doesn't mean we can't get along, be friends. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that you have to understand you're dealing with imperfect beings. You're by nature you're dealing with an imperfect set of people. Okay, so how this all happens, right? I saw an old Spielberg interview, and he was talking about this, about when he first realized that his parents were human, right? Not just his parents, and it really kind of struck me, because that's the truth. I think I would have been about 17, 18 for me when I pretty much got over the idea of parents and realized, no, they're just as messed up as everybody else. these people are just as messed up as every other crazy lunatic out here on this planet. So, and you kind of reach a point of sort of like a forgiveness type of thing where you just get past it and go, you know, you guys are just as nuts and messed up as everybody else, and everybody's that way. And yeah, that's kind of it. So I mean, it doesn't mean we can't work together and do things and stuff, but just always keep in the back of your mind, right? Like what you're dealing with. You're dealing with an imperfect being. That's just reality. Agreed. Criminal's morals contradicts mine, isn't it? But that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, like if it becomes like what's criminal and what's not, right? The founders of our country were considered criminals by the British Crown. Like, you know what I mean? It's like at a certain point, you kind of have to look at it and go, well, are you making a... Oh, there's an old book by Christopher Paolini, the Aragon series, and I read it years ago, and there's a scene in there where, you know, he kind of swears fealty to this other side, and not realizing, and then being chastised later, saying, dude, what? Like, these people are just as, like, these are dangerous people on both sides of this whole thing. Like, why would you swear fealty to one? Like, you have really no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Like, yeah, that's kind of it. So, great job. You've gone for 90 minutes. Have I? Wow. Okay. I gotta start winding down if it's been 90 minutes. I'm gonna start boring people to tears. Guess why the Brits gave the Rothschild Palestine in 1977? Yeah, well, yeah, probably. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. Did you hear the speech translations? I have. I've heard several of them, actually. People keep posting them on Birdsite. It's interesting stuff. It would have been fascinating, actually, just from a historical standpoint, that would have been fascinating if they translated all those speeches way back in the day. Again, I don't say that because of for any propagandistic reasons. I say that just from historical accuracy. Remember, knowing history isn't as powerful as knowing accurate history. What if you, think about it, what if you knew all of the accurate history? There's even Game of Thrones. What is it? A Song of Ice and Fire. Game of Thrones even touches on this with the character Bran, who knows the actual history, like the accurate history, not the history that the books say, but the actual history. How powerful would you be if you knew the truly accurate history? Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of it. How powerful would you be? Put yourself in that position. How powerful would you all be if you knew real history, the good and the bad, like both sides, and you realized that, there's no good guys in any of history. No, even in Conan the Barbarian. Once again, to get into the movie aspect, but even in Conan the Barbarian, one of the last speeches he gives in the movies is where he's praying to Crom, and he says, no one will remember if we were good men or bad. All it was is just that the few stood against many. That's the way to look at it, at least in my mind. Is well, yeah. I mean, does it really matter? No one will remember me, for example. I mean, most of you forget me, as soon as you'll be on to something else. But think about it that, in those terms. I mean, in another 20, 25, 30 years or so, anything that I've done is just gone. It'll never be remembered by anybody. There's no scholars that will crack open these videos and do any deep diving. It's never going to happen, dude. I'm not that vainglorious. Okay, it's just reality. That's just the truth. And so, yeah, I mean, some people building while others try to destroy. Yeah, that's just it, and that's that pushback. Some people it's their karma, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better word, but is to be that resistance to each other, which isn't exactly a bad thing. Resistance is okay, but eventually you have to be able to, again, remember, like I said last week, you have to let the other side has to win occasionally. Otherwise, the futility of everything catches up and stuff, and eventually nobody plays the game anymore, which is where this all came from in the first place. Eventually, what makes a video game boring? It's one thing if it's challenging. It's another if you can never win it, right? Any video game, any game, doesn't make any difference. If you can never have an opportunity to win it ever, then it just becomes kind of boring. Why play? How's it going, Axel? I'm in the U.S. at the moment. Came here Thursday from the U.K. Are you hiring? If only. I do not pay enough money, actually. I would tell you that you are better to find probably anybody. I would tell anybody that up front, because our company, we are such a small company now. We basically have dialed it down to just such a bare skeleton staff, because there just isn't a lot of money in the stuff that we do anymore. I mean, everything that I do now is like there's a reason I'm wearing, like, you know, my coveralls and stuff, because, like, you know, first base, Axel; second base, Axel; third base, Axel; you know, shortstop. I mean, it's like just it's right field, left field, etc. It's like that's just how it works. So unfortunately, I don't know that I would be able to pay anywhere near enough to actually it wouldn't be anything that they could live with. I used to hire people back in the day when I owned a pawn shop, and I would hire guys, and I would tell them up front, like, hey, listen, this job basically pays nothing, because I don't have like deep margins. Most people, sometimes in the pawn business you do, and on some stuff you have deep margins. Other stuff you have like really just thin margins on, and especially if you're paying leases and on and on and on. And I'm not trying to bore you with this. I'm just pointing out, like, this is what would end up happening. And so I would tell guys, like, you know, if you're here to work here to, like, you know, for the discount or to get deals on something like that occasionally, then yeah, we can work together. But like, if you're here for big bucks, man, dude, I'm the wrong place. There's just other places out there you probably go work that you could be paid more. By contrast, in another business that I owned for a number of years, actually, there was a young lady who came in, and she wanted to be hired, and she was, I want to say, like 15 or something like that. And I said, well, you know, I need to talk to your mom, you know, have her come in and talk to, you know, me or my staff or something like that, and the managers, and we can talk about it. So, I don't hire anybody unless I have, like, because, you know, school nights and what have you. And her mom came in and sure enough cleared it all off and everything. They said, okay, well, it's fine and stuff. And so give her a part-time job. And the challenge was that, you know, I told her same thing. I said, you know, like, we can't pay you any big money. But I did point this out, though. And this is true, actually. I did point this out. I said, however, the people you're working with here have like over 100+ years of experience combined. I mean, like, and all of us are business owners. All of us have, like, just enormous depth of experience across all different kinds of sectors. So I pointed this out. I said, what you are able to do is learn. And of course that works for somebody who's really young. Someone's 15, 16, you know, basically prodigy age or child prodigy age. Then they can learn from that kind of stuff. And they don't have to necessarily make a lot of money because they're learning a bunch of stuff. But if they're not, you know, like, if you're having to try and pay somebody to live and everything, it's much harder to do that. So There Will Be Blood. I fell asleep during it, man. One of these days, I actually need to go back and finish watching that movie. I'm not to diss, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson, but I just got I got into it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I'll never forget that I was watching it, and I was so tired, I was so exhausted. I don't remember what I'd done that day. I did a ton of physical work. And it was probably because it was like 105 degrees, and I was moving, you know, probably a whole bunch of really heavy stuff that day, and I just passed out, and I actually completely forgot about it. I need to go back and redo that. Blues Brothers, I haven't seen that in forever. I'd have to go back and rewatch that. You're not religious, but do you feel the evolutionary theory is legitimate? Yes and no. So evolution happens is a natural state of existence for all human beings. Aging is considered evolution. I mean, it's just your cells are evolving, right? Now, the idea of, okay, that mankind or that all life spawned from nothing, that's a tough one for me. It always has been. That's always been a tough one for me. And like I said, that's why I mentioned before that I think it's just as wacky a theory to say that God spoke the world into existence in 6 days versus, you know, billions and billions of years ago, we evolved from nothing. There was nothing, and then there was something. Like, yeah, it's a tough one. I think that no matter what, I mean, there's going to be energy involved. Now, what is the source of that energy? That's up for grabs. So I mean, I hope that answers your question. But as far as like, do I believe that God, for lack of a better word, is the master of all energy? Well, okay, that's what that would actually be. That would be someone who actually was able to conjure energy from nothing. That would be about as close to God as I could think of for a definition. Tombstone, haven't seen it in years. I need to. I actually liked the Wyatt Earp one. I know it's horrible, and lots of people hate me for saying that, but it's like, I mean, actually, it was Kevin Costner. Costner gets a lot of grief, but it's like that movie actually wasn't too bad. Only because, like I said, I'm a Gene Hackman fan, so anything Gene Hackman's in, especially westerns, like I'm all over it. People can create families, some build communities, like the Amish. That's right. No, the Amish have the right of it. I've been actually very, I don't want to say pro-Amish because I don't know what that means, but I've been very honest about the whole idea of the Amish. The Amish have the right of it. And in a lot of cases, the idea of like, dude, wake up in the morning, go do some work, and then go home, and eat a big meal of like all kinds of like homegrown stuff that's cooked by by a girl who can cook, or your wife, woman who can cook, and everybody's happy. Like, I got to tell you, it's hard to, yeah. And then of course they all have families and so on. Again, the Amish have problems too. I don't lionize them. They got a lot of problems there in their communities too. I mean, they could use some outside gene influence. Did I say that out loud? Anyway, see, people wouldn't believe you. They would say fake news. Yeah. Enjoying listening. I think the case of Budweiser, case of Budweiser's in a campfire. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, I'm not much of a beer drinker. I never have been. So I actually drink wine, believe it or not. I actually prefer wine to beers, but I don't drink very often. It's rare. Good Ben is a relative term. It absolutely is. It's a very relative term. History written by the victors. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and Churchill's right about that. No rich in power. No rich in power, no wars, no homeless, no unemployed, no hungry. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you're ever going to solve poverty. I don't think that there's actually a solution to poverty. I think there's a solution to synthetic poverty, and I've been over that a couple of times. And synthetic poverty is just people stealing from you. But I think there is a solution to that. But there's just going to be different varying degrees of what somebody wants in their life. I mean, not everybody wants to. The reason I point out that is because I don't want a 40,000 square foot mega mansion. I'm not interested in that. 38,000 square feet is more than enough for me. No adrenaline equals boring. Let's see here. I'm listening to you at a bus stop in South Beach, Miami. How's the weather there? It's got to be pretty. It's got to be probably in the 70s, I would think. South Beach. That's a pretty warm area. Let's see here. Look up for government contracts. Yeah, I don't. So that's just it. We don't do a lot of government work. I got burned one time on government contract work, and I said never again. I had a government bid on something, and they wasted my time to the extent that I couldn't. That it was so unprofitable to do all of that, to deal with all of their madness, and then for them to finally pay me something like 90 days later after I had sent an invoice. Like, dude, forget it. Like, I can't deal with you people. If you want to give me your American Access card and just have me just bill you whatever, then I'll do it. But other than that, forget it. Is a siren from ICE in the background? I don't know. Was there a siren? I didn't even notice it, actually. There's a little dog across the street barking, but I didn't even notice. If there was a siren, I didn't even notice it. So, are you doing former bird site tomorrow? Yeah, probably at 7:00 Central Time. I'll do. I'm a lot more unedited there because I can be. Big Bang was God's revolt and punishment for prior civilization. Like, dude, that's another one of these perfectly viable theories. I think it's just as viable as anything else out there. No, that's not what I wanted. Mega Mansion, here's, no kidding. Yeah, that's just it. I'm like, I never have. It's one of those things, like the mega mansions they're cool to look at, and they're from an architectural standpoint, assuming they're not just this garbage architecture that just is really bland. But if they're interesting, sort of like the Biltmore. Biltmore is a good example of this. The Biltmore Mansion, we're all familiar with. It's very famous. You can look it up. You don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up. Biltmore, I think is how it's spelled. Anyway, it's beautiful. It's beautiful architecture. It's like a French countryside estate. It's super pretty, and there's a lot of interesting architecture involved there. That's interesting, that's the interesting kind of stuff to me. But I think you can get the same thing with, roughly with like 6,000 square feet. The same basic effect. I would, and not that after 6,000. I'm just pointing out, like, I mean, you can get it with a smaller. I would rather have a home of really high quality and with very, 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 very good infrastructure that's built well and that everything works and it's not a bunch of half-assery. I would much rather have a smaller house built like that than these McMansion slapped together garbage places. Like those are, that are 15,000 square feet that's fallen apart. I say this because as a technician who goes to people's houses, I have customers like that live in these McMansions, that have, that live in like 12,000 square foot houses. And I walk through them and I walk around them, and they are in disrepair constantly because they're cheaply built. They're such cheaply built houses that they're constant. You can see all the things, and again, and I have a critical eye, so you can see all the things wrong with these houses. And you're like, dude, this is going to cost. Like, if you came to me as a contractor, you came to me and said, Axel, okay, can you make, like, dude, you're talking like 200 grand worth of fixing. You have so much stuff wrong with this. And then of course, it's always more expensive. Anybody in contracting who follows me, you know how this is. To go back and fix something is way more expensive than if you just did it right the first time. It's 10 times the cost to go back and put a light fixture in a closet than it was to just pay the $15 and put it in the closet when you built the house. Right? I mean, that's just reality. So, let's see, USA can't. I don't know what we're talking about. Sorry. Thanks for doing these live videos. It's refreshing to listen to you. You're extremely intelligent. Oh, well, I appreciate it. Thank you. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. Mega mansions require mega expenses. Yes, they do. That is exactly the problem, and that's the issue that I have with it. It isn't so much the house. I mean, yeah, that's cool. It's the expenses that go with maintaining something like that. As a maintenance man myself, I'm the maintenance guy. I'm the guy you call when you want to have stuff, maintained. And yeah, the costs to maintain this kind of stuff is just crazy. It's just nuts. I mean, look at just what it costs to like maintain a pool. Something as simple as that. Now, don't get me wrong, I said this is someone who loves swimming pools, but I'm just pointing out, like, there's a cost. You either do it yourself or you hire somebody else. And either way, there's a cost involved, and you have to do all that stuff. I live in an 1,100 square foot apartment. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I mean, the house that I'm building will probably be about 3,800 square feet or so, but it's not the same kind of 3,800 square feet that you think of in today's world, where you're like, oh, 3,800 square feet, that's a huge house. Like, not the way that I'm doing it, actually, and stuff. It's just more larger rooms, and that's just so that, because I like the larger room aspect. Has nothing to do with the actual exotic architecture. Though I'll do something interesting. I'll probably do a lot of woodworking. I'll have the equipment by then, so I'll probably do a lot of wood. And also, because a lot of the oaks that I'm taking down now, I mean, I'll be able to actually repurpose a lot of those oaks into lumber. So, unfortunately, I've had to take out actually quite a few oak trees, and which really is a shame, because I hate cutting down hardwoods. Let's see here, 2,500 square foot house by a stupid architect. I know how that is. I live in a 2,300 square foot house right now, and not a day goes by I question, what were they thinking with this? The other place I was at was like, I want to say about 1,400 square feet or so, and it was a architectural nightmare. I don't know, weird. So, currently what industry and trade work are you in and stuff. I drive a semi truck. I work on generators, power generators. I run a chainsaw. Like I do all kinds of stuff. But those are my two prominent or most the two most profitable industries right now for the time being, if that makes any sense. Because I change if there's something more profitable, I'll go do it for a while. So, that's just it. And this is more of a hobby. I think the total amount that I got from TikTok for all of like 2024 was probably something like $800 for the whole year. It would just, it's not really, it doesn't really do anything. And I'm not picking on it and stuff. I'm happy for the donations. I'm happy that the TikTok gives me a little money and everything. That's great. So I'm not dissing any of it, but it isn't anything that I do for like a living. Social media is just more of just me it started with me actually trying to answer a few questions for friends. That's how this started. And it started with me doing some videos on YT, just trying to explain some of the money aspect of why it was they were being ripped off. And why it was that they're like, why are we working so hard but going backward in lifestyle? That's how this all started. Old homes built better, etc. Guys, my back is killing me. That'll be the end of it for tonight and everything. Probably next Saturday and stuff. But I will be on Former Bird site tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the more unedited, unfiltered, environment where I can say a lot. I can actually be a bit more me there as opposed to here and stuff. Here I have to clean all this stuff up as best I can. But so if you happen to be there over on Bird site, 7 o'clock Central Time, I'll be there for about an hour or so. Take it easy. Have a great night.